Everyone, welcome back to Biblio Fitness. Hope everyone's had a good day, made some glorious gains. Today, I did want to discuss section 427, which is titled The Embellishment of Science. It's a little longer. I am going to read it because it's quite interesting, but it's a very nice little analogy to basically the beginning of this whole the book 5 or chapter 5 or whatever you want to call it, the dawn of day, which is from the very outset, is really what is our interpretation of the truth, why we seek the truth, and how our own preconceptions even either hinder or allow us to progress towards that truth, right? Like because in speaking about today, you know there are some people that reproach against something like truth or reality because of its coldness, its dryness, its inhumanity and suffering. So people refute that, and that's why I always believe in, what's the name, credo quia absurdum est, which is I believe because it is absurd. And my apologies for the terrible enunciation of Latin, but it's just very nice. Like, I think he's like, this is a crazy book. But before I continue off on this unnecessary tangent, well, not really unnecessary because it goes through the whole thing, but let's continue. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Quote, "In the same way that the feeling that nature is ugly, wild, tedious, we must embellish it, brought about Rococo horticulture. So does the view that science is ugly, difficult, dry, dreary, and weary. We must embellish it. Invariably gives rise to something called philosophy. This philosophy sets out to do what all art and poetry endeavor to do, vis-a-vis giving amusement above all else. But it wishes to do this, in conformity with its hereditary pride, in a higher and more sublime fashion before an audience of superior intellects. It is no small ambition to create for these intellects a kind of horticulture, the principal charm of which, like that of the usual gardening, is to bring about an optical illusion by means of temples, perspective, grottos, winding walks, and waterfalls, to speak in similes, exhibiting science in a condensed form and in all kinds of strange and unexpected illuminations, infusing into it as much indecision, irrationality, and dreaminess as will enable us to walk about in it as in savage nature, but without trouble and boredom. Those who are possessed of this ambition even dream of making religion superfluous. Religion, which among men of former times served as the highest kind of entertainment. All this is now running its course, and will one day attain its highest tide. Even now, hostile voices are being raised against philosophy, exclaiming, 'Return to science, to nature, and the naturalness of science.' And thus an age may begin which may discover the most powerful beauty precisely in the savage and ugly domains of science. Just as it is only since the time of Rousseau that we have discovered the sense for the beauty of high mountains and deserts." End quote. Very beautiful. And I love how he makes these sort of analogies and stuff, really talking about how we construct these endeavors of religion and philosophy, basically like a horticulture, like, gardening, manipulating nature in a way that is optically pleasing, even though it doesn't change anything underlying of it, right? Like, you don't really change the structure of it all. You don't change the reality. You don't change the essence, what it's really about, right? And that's the endeavor of philosophy from this perspective, which is very interesting, how we began to see as nature as ugly, disgusting, and that's what we invented science, right? To develop at least some sort of control, at least to develop a semblance of order, right? We look at the stars and we look at the trajectory of the earth around the sun and all these things, really trying to standardize as much of nature and its chaos as possible, right? And that was the endeavor of science, right? Nature is too much. We must embellish it. We must find a way to make it more aesthetically pleasing to us. We must develop it and contort it and manipulate it in a fashion that would have us believe that we are always in control, or have us forget that no matter how planned our endeavors may be, we are always going to be susceptible to the whims of chaos. Um, it's these sort of, that was the endeavor of science. But then now he says it in, I don't even know why it closes, but how he says it in this section that, eventually science just became too dreary, too dry for other people, and therefore we must embellish it and create philosophy. Because I believe even in science and the trajectory, I mean, running alongside logic and reason, with that in mind, it probably did lead to conclusions that not many people wanted to accept as valid truths, right? In their lives, it was not good enough for them. Too boring, too inhuman. Why do I always have to suffer? How can you tell me that this is just a natural cycle of life? Why am I suffering? Why am I at the bottom? Why am I dying? Why am I getting eaten alive? Why, like, all these questions that were not found any requisite answer, or any, or for a long time we weren't able to justifiably or reliably answer these questions. And that's why we created a philosophy, and the endeavor of philosophy, trying to extrapolate or make all these universal truths in some sort of abstract form, trying to universalize the human experience, right, in a much more and embellish the experience, embellish all of the make us more complicated than what we really are, manipulating us, manipulating ourselves in the way that we view life and the way that life is to us, creating this culture, creating this little garden of ours, making waterfalls, making everything aesthetically pleasing, even though at the end of the day, nothing has changed. And that was, philosophy. Everybody really trying to find a way to justify their refutation towards the realities of the world. And one could say that the entire endeavor of civilization is this refutation, is this control, is this like, you could say civilization is the ultimate horticulture, is the ultimate version of gardening, right? That, like you go back to the very beginning of the dawn of civilization, and what was it all about? Sectionalizing a piece of nature for yourself to create a semblance of security, on order, and not worrying that you're going to get snatched up by a wolf in the middle of the night, or whatever other animal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is walling off nature in creating a moment, and a little acreage for yourself. That's literally that's how it all started. And philosophy is really for those that, the answers that science provided were not enough. It did not tickle or did not fill the preconceptions that people already had, that were just trying to find a justification. So it really is all an optical illusion when it comes to the endeavor of philosophy, right? Especially when you go into the moral philosophies, when you go into religions, and they really manipulate the world in a way that justifies their innate presumptions and insecurities, and try to sanctify it. A world where the sufferers will be the first, where, it is easier for a rich man to go, what is it, to go through the eye of a needle. What is it? It is easier for a man to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the. No, wait. It's easier for a camel or something to enter through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I always remember that saying, because it was completely contrary to nature, right? Who are the ones that before them will enter Elysium? Who were the ones before them that would enter any remnant or any semblance of a heaven or an afterlife of Valhalla, for example, were the mighty warriors, were the ones who were murdering and slaughtering and taking loot and making a name for themselves in a very brutal world. But then everything started getting inverted because what is that religion appeasing to? You know, it's an illusion for those who have given up on hope. And this is that false hope that they now have accepted as their reality and as their truth, because this is the only one that is going to allow them to continue on this little game called life. That is going to allow them to be able to cope with life. But and he always talks about this at the very end, is that one day we'll get through this. Maybe one day we'll finally see how disgusting all this manipulating is, and taking life for what it is and accepting life and its beauty as its savageness and ugliness for its beauty, because that's just a part of life. And that the most powerful beauty is found in the savage and ugly domains of science. No longer beating around the bush, as it were, but to take life as it is, to be an affirmer, right? And to realize that these are all this manipulating and all these optical illusions, all these supposed remedies, right? If anything has inflicted more harm than good. It's made us incredibly weak. It's made us incredibly sensitive to the realities of the world. There's many conversations and many questions that we cannot even pose because we're still within the realm of this morality, within the realm of this horticulture that is philosophy and religion. This form of entertainment has now become our reality, and we don't want to step outside and look at the light. We're all in the cave, to use the famous metaphor by Plato. We're still in the cave looking at shadows. We've gotten so accustomed to these illusions and these self-imposed delusions as well, that we can't see nature for what it is. We look at nature with nothing but repugnance, and we can say, "Oh, nature's beautiful," and all this, but even when we look at it that way, it's a myopian way of looking at it, right? Like when we talk about nature, we always look at it in some sort of stupid imaginary way, like some sort of fantasy of how beautiful nature is, and don't you see the colors and all, it's so pretty. And I'm like, dude, but like there's nothing but decay underneath it all. You're suffering and death. Animals are getting eaten day and night and all the time, and they become fertilizer for those beautiful trees and shit you see all the time. It's a cycle of life. And why can't that be translated onto human existence without us throwing a fuss over it? Because we're conceited and we're selfish and narcissistic, and we always need to think that we are the center of the world. But that's how it is, right? Like even in nature, when we look past when we go beyond the pale of morality and the bullshit and see the world for what it is, you can't see that. You begin to accept, yes, life is brutal, but it makes it beautiful. Without suffering, will life even have any meaning? I don't like that idea of us going back to the Garden of Eden where everyone's stupid and blissful. Doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun. But I just do love these sort of little sections that talk about it in this way. It's a very unique way of looking at it. Is really having a little place of nature for yourself, that you didn't change any of the underlying mechanisms or structures, but you just made it look pretty for you. You're confusing yourself in your guess of how beautiful it all is, when it's just superficial. Nothing has changed. Nothing ever will change, and we always try to run away from that fact that nothing has changed in relations to how we interact with one another, how we dominate one another. Even in this world where it's become increasingly more democratic, for sure, but the human condition has not changed very much. We've just gotten more elaborate, with the illusions, with the construction of our labyrinths or horticulture, to use today's example. Being as realistic as possible, even though that brings on its own unique ordeals, I suppose, or challenges. But that'll be all for today. I just felt like this is a very interesting little section. Slowly but surely getting through. Slowly but surely. But yeah, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. I do hope you all have a great day. Make some beautiful gains. Until next time, peace.